All right, Grandpa, take me back to the Vietnam War. Were you drafted?
Yes, I was. I was drafted. The alternative was to spend 2 years in the Army. I thought about joining the Navy for 4 years, or the Marines for 3. Decided, well, I would just take my chances with 2 years in the Army. That was the shorter deal.
Oh, okay. And what year were you drafted?
I was drafted in 1965, and when I went to Vietnam, it was in the middle of 66, and came home July of 67. So
okay.
Just about a year that I spent there.
All right. Now, what were your emotions when you found out that you were drafted to go into the Vietnam War?
I kind of knew it was coming. It had been going on for a few years.
Right.
I had a friend of the family. She told me that, oh, by the time you get out of basic training, it'll be over, so you don't have to worry about going to Vietnam. Well, I went to Vietnam and I was out of the service, and it still went on to, I think, about early 1970s.
Oh, okay. Now, before the war, what were your feelings on it?
I felt it was something we should do. Our government was telling us that it was the right thing to do. South Vietnam was being invaded by the North, who were communistic. They wanted to remain democratic. So we were there to keep communism from infiltrating into all of Asia.
Right.
So it felt like a patriotic thing to do.
Good. Now, describe for me what it was like to be in the war down in Vietnam.
It was, well, first of all, I was very fortunate because I was in a support unit.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate. The guys that were out in the field, the infantry guys, they carried the heavy loads.
Right.
We were more of a combat support unit. I was in Saigon and Cam Ranh Bay. It was kind of confusing because you didn't know who the enemy was. It wasn't like they had uniforms. You had the North Vietnamese, you had the Viet Cong, and you had a lot of North Vietnamese, Viet Cong sympathizers.
Right.
So they could actually play both sides. You would have some, and we had little villages where you went in, there were hardly any men around. Well, they were out in the jungle somewhere.
Yeah.
And you learned that you couldn't trust anybody.
Right. Now that you were in the war, what were your feelings on Vietnam at that point?
While I was in the war,
yep.
At that point, I still felt that it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for a mission, but it soon became apparent from dealing with the Vietnamese that they liked us for what we could give them, but I think they would go both ways for their own safety.
Mm-hmm.
It was mixed emotions.
Yeah.
Because little by little you could see they really only wanted from us what we could give them, and rightfully so, because some of the places, if they patronized with us too much, the Viet Cong would come in and execute their village leaders.
Right.
So they were caught in the middle. Most of them were rice farmers. They just wanted to live their life.
Okay. So when you returned from the war in 1967, what were your feelings? Were you still same patriotic feelings about the war, or had your feelings changed?
They changed a lot. While I was over there, I had mixed emotions because there were a lot of protests going on here about should we be in the war or not. The thing that really changed my feelings on that is when I realized it was a political war. Mm-hmm. We could have won that war.
Right.
Vietnam is about the size of California, so it's like Northern California invading Southern California. We're the strongest military and strongest country in the world, and by all rights, we could have won that war had we gone after the enemy.
Right.
We could have taken out North Vietnam, but there were so many constraints on our Air Corps and our fighting men to appease the political people that we were losing lives by not taking out the leaders of North Vietnam. We could have, to draw an analogy of, we dropped the bomb in Hiroshima, in World War II, which ultimately saved many lives and Japanese lives too. Even though we killed probably 80,000 on one and 70,000 on the other bomb in Nagasaki, overall, it saved a lot of lives, even though it was terrible. We could have ended that war early, but we chose not to.
Right. Now, from this entire experience that you gained, what was the most important thing that you learned from being in Vietnam?
I think a lot of it is, well, being in the Army and as well as Vietnam is a sense of growing up, a sense of independence. I was 20 years old when I got drafted. Turned 21 on my last day of basic training. But at that point, so that wasn't too much older than you are,
Right.
a couple more years. But I learned to have confidence in myself, to be on your own, and to rely on your buddies. We worked as a unit. So it was a big stepping stone as far as leaving the family. You're confused, you're kind of scared, you're not sure what's going to happen. The unknown is very difficult. But you learn to rely on your own sense, and you gain a lot of confidence in yourself and of your buddies, that you can do the right thing. You come back grown up.
Right. All right. Thank you for this interview.
You're welcome, Jake. Good luck, buddy.
Thank you.